This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. As you know, at Do It Marketing, we work with thought-leading entrepreneurs and executives who want to boost their visibility, credibility, reach, revenue, and reputation. We do that through a combination of marketing, mentoring, and done-for-you services, and more information is waiting for you online at doitmarketing.com. More information about this episode and our amazing, incredible guest is also online when you visit thespeakingshow.com. My guest today, you know him and love him as episode 12, because John was with us for episode 12 of The Speaking Show. Now we're well over 100 episodes. John Corcoran, co-founder of Rise 25. This man is a super connector, an online entrepreneur, and a podcast relationship building expert. Welcome back, number 12.
Thank you, David. I'm glad to be here. Great to be back.
So your business has evolved in some really, really cool ways. I remember when I first came into your world, it was as a client. It was as a student of yours. So you had a program way back in the day called Webinar 1K. How to make your first $1,000 with webinars. And then we're both members of this joint venture mastermind group, kind of the best kept secret online, which obviously now that hundreds and hundreds of people are hearing about it now, no longer a best kept secret.
Out.
And John can tell you about it. I can tell you about it. But that's how I first came into your world. So take us back to the whole John adventure. I know you had a little White House speech writing in your background. For some reason, you went to law school. You became a lawyer. Paint us the whole picture, and then let's talk about the entrepreneurial evolution as well.
Sure, yeah. So brief background. Yeah, I started off my career working in politics, 23 years old. I went from an English major at a party school, basically, to a year later, I'm writing the president's words as a writer in presidential letters and messages during the Clinton administration, working in the White House, which was an amazing experience, and I'm really glad that I did it. I eventually went out of politics and went back to law school, got my degree. Why? I guess because I figured it was a versatile degree that would help me to be able to do different things. And so I did that. I eventually started my own practice. And then I realized, just as a professional running your own business, that, it was a very difficult endeavor. And you're constantly starting over every month from zero, needing to get new clients in the door. And so over the years, it's been a trajectory of getting away from that and creating something more consistent and predictable. Rise 25 now, I've been doing about 5 years with my business partner, Jeremy Weiss, and it's been a great partnership.
Now, how did you two meet, and what kind of 1 + 1 = 3? Give me the idea of the chemistry.
Well, we met through podcasting, of course, because that's how all my relationships come, it seems. Not all of them. But he and I connected. For 6 years, he was the senior producer for Mixergy, which was one of the early successful business podcasts. And he put all their systems in place. He was coming to a conference in San Francisco. He reached out to me beforehand. We ended up doing a small little mastermind for about a dozen people. We enjoyed it. And we ended up just going from there and continuing to work together. And so it's been a great partnership. He and I see eye to eye on so many different things. We kind of can almost complete each other's sentences. And he and I both coincidentally started podcasting around the same time, around 2011, 2012. He and I both started, and we both, have used it over the years to broaden our networks, connect with clients and referral partners, strategic partners, influencers, speakers, authors, you name it, share our own thought leadership. And so it is something that we're both very passionate about.
Now, Rise 25 has also evolved over this time, because you were doing some courses. You had this amazing sort of mastermind, big event or series of events over the years. And kind of walk us through the arc of that story of how that evolved and sort of where things are today with your primary offerings and services.
Sure. Yeah. So as I was practicing law, I eventually started building up an email list and started building up a following audience behind my blog and my podcast. Eventually started creating digital courses. And when Jeremy and I paired up, I was mostly selling digital courses. That was mostly my revenue source, which is tough. It's not a great way to just rely on digital courses. So we started doing events together, which we really enjoyed doing. We still do some together, like we're doing one on Sunday. We're doing a dinner in Scottsdale, Arizona. And they started getting bigger and bigger. And then we realized that it wasn't a great lifestyle for us. I've had more and more kids. I have 4 young kids now. And I don't want to be away. I don't want to be traveling too much. And the revenue was very fluctuative. You'd have great months, you'd be crushing it, and then it'd be like really slow for a couple of months. And so we eventually realized that, it all kind of came back for us to podcasting, because we would have clients for years where they would come to us with a sticky situation or problem or something. We'd be like, well, you really need to start a podcast. Or what I would do is I would recommend that you interview them and you put them on a podcast. And we'd say it over and over again. They'd be like, oh, great, I'm going to do it. And they would never do it. And so eventually we just took our team, which we'd built, and we'd put systems in place. Jeremy had taken Mixergy systems, put them in place for ourselves. And we said, okay, we'll start using these guys for you guys and help you out. And then you have no excuse. And we'll combine our high-level strategy with 20 years experience with the team that will do it for you. And it literally removed all the excuses and allowed people to focus on the highest and best use of their time. And that's what I recommend to everyone. Whether, obviously we can't serve everyone, but I recommend if you have a podcast, you really got to focus on the highest and best use of your time. You should not be getting stuck in the weeds, which is what I did when I got started, writing up show notes, editing audio yourself. That stuff is not the highest, best use of your time. You're going to get discouraged. You're going to get sick of doing it, and you're going to give up. So you got to get that stuff off your plate as soon as possible.
The only part of this podcast that I do, John, is this part right here.
As it should be. That's great. I love that. I love to hear that. Yeah. And when I'm done, it's 60 seconds, no more. I take the audio file, I drag it, put it into a folder, boom, I'm done. And that's how it should be for everyone, so that you can focus on this, which is the relationship with the people you're connecting with. And that's not to say that you ignore the audience entirely. It's just that a lot of people, they take an old school media mentality to podcasting. They think of it, or they see NPR the way they do it, or they see the way ESPN does it or something like that. Or they think old school media mentality, like you just need to get as many downloads as possible and then charge for ads. Well, we say it's stepping over dollars to pick up pennies, because it's not a great way of monetizing. Even those who have millions of downloads, you don't get a lot of money for those ads. It's not a great way to monetize. But if you have a profitable B2B business on the back end and you use it to strategically develop relationships with the right people while also sharing your thought leadership, then it's a tremendous tool for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, we're having a little meta discussion here because we're on a podcast. We're friends. We're networking partners. And in our JVMM group, you gave some very, very valuable tips about how to use a podcast as a relationship builder. And, you had a look at our lineup here at the Speaking Show, and you said, well, it looks like you're interviewing a lot of these influencers and big names and, Jeffrey Gitomer and this one and that one. And only 10% of your guests should be the big names, and you're totally missing the boat. Talk about that, and who should we focus 90% of our podcast invitations toward?
Yeah, I see this happen a lot. No offense to Jeffrey, of course. I was talking to someone the other day who had done about 150 episodes over the course of a year or two, was thrilled about that, was all excited, gung-ho about the podcast. I said, how many clients have you gotten out of doing the podcast? She said, nothing. I said, for that many interviews, you should be getting more reward for your labors. You put so much effort into it. And I could tell she was getting frustrated. I see this happen so often. And then people are just on the verge of giving up because it doesn't work. And the thing is with the influencer strategy is ultimately, what does it get you? I found personally, I've interviewed lots of big name influencers, big gurus, they big followings and stuff like that. What does it get you? It's not often that they become a really good direct referral partner, like they're referring people to you. Not very often, right? So they get you credibility, they get you social proof, the fact that you have them on your show. You can turn around to others and say, hey, I had Jeffrey Gitomer on my show, and people are like, oh, wow. And then literally they're like, well, I'm not going to say no to him because Jeffrey Gitomer said yes to him, so how could I possibly say no? That's serving one purpose. That's an important purpose to have them on there. But it's not because they're going to refer you, and they're probably not going to become a client either. So if it's not client and if it's not referral, then what else is there for supporting your business? Social proof, okay, fine. Help your brand, okay, fine. But ultimately, I think that influencers should be less than 10% of the guests that you interview. You want to get some big names in there so that you can brag to others and say, hey, I had this person and this person, this boldface name on there. But then ultimately, you should be interviewing people who are potential client. Actually, so it's clients, referral partners, or strategic partners, past, current, or potential in each of those categories. And you should be interviewing people, and you can ask them about, what, they might not be an expert in what you're an expert in. Maybe you can help them crush it and become a better speaker or whatever it is your area of expertise is, but they have other areas of expertise. So have them onto your show to share their expertise in other areas. And then that's a wonderful partnership, because then they might be like, you know what, David, I'm so glad I'm talking to you now. This is after the interview, of course. I'm so glad I'm talking to you now because we've been wanting to speak more, but I'm just finding it's not going that well. One, I'm not getting on that many stages. Two, I'm not doing it that well. And three, it's not turning into great results for my business. Can we chat about that? And you're like, well, just so happens I have 15 minutes right now if you want to chat about it now. So that's why this strategy is really important. You should be talking to people who you could potentially help. You should be talking to people who serve clientele who you can also help, because you are passionate and you are compassionate about the work that you do and you want to help more people. And unless you have conversations with the right people, then you can't help more people. And so I think that it is compassionate for you to do that.
Hey, good looking. Are you currently getting paid to speak? Would you like to ramp that up? We can help. Book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team at doitmarketing.com/call, and let's see what we might do together. The call is free, but the results may be priceless. Now, I know that you've got sort of a podcast formula. You mentioned that Jeremy has a certain structure, and then he brought that to the table, and you obviously have all of your expertise and experience. There are some missed opportunities, including this guy right here who is missing some things that you should be doing before the interview, some things to be doing during the podcast interview, and then some very specific things you should be doing after the podcast interview. Talk about how you help your clients in those three phases of the podcasting strategy.
Sure. So before interviews, the most important piece is not this thing we're talking into, the microphone. If you ask most people, 95% of the energy and attention before they start podcasting is around, well, what microphone should I buy? Or what software should I use to record it? That's like such a tiny little decision. Okay, let's move past that. What's much more important is really coming up with your roadmap of who are the people that you want to feature on the show. And again, they should fall into those categories. They should fall into client, referral partner, or strategic partner, and some influencers too. And they should be past, current, or potential in each of those categories. That's really what the majority of the effort beforehand should go into. Then once you reach out to people to be a guest on the podcast, it's about, one, setting expectations so that they have all the answers of what to expect on the show. And it's also about starting to build a relationship with that person. This is your opportunity to make a good impression right from the get-go. So make sure that they have all the answers that they need. They know what to expect. You show up on time, prepared, and all that kind of stuff. During the interview, that's a great opportunity to learn about what their challenges are. That's what's wonderful about a podcast is you can highlight their expertise, but you can also look on what else are they focused on? What are they excited about? What are they trying to do in the future? And when I do that, when I'm interviewing someone, I'm looking for also what other opportunities and ways in which I can help them. I love making introductions. So who else can I introduce this person to after the interview is over who's going to be a great person for them? Maybe they're hiring a COO. Maybe they're looking for joint venture partners. Whatever it is, maybe there's something personal, like they're going on vacation to Hawaii next month and they haven't picked a hotel yet. Maybe I can give them a couple of recommendations because I was there, something along those lines. And then after the interview's over, there's 7 different routes, which we found over the last 10 years that you can take people for taking a guest and then moving them in the direction towards becoming a client or referral partner or strategic partners. And there's some other ones too, but there's 7 primary different ones. And, fundamentally, which one you pursue depends on how warm that relationship is. if you've done it right, if you've selected well, if the person's qualified to potentially work with you and they're interested and they're ready to go, you will get people at the end of the interview who will say, as I mentioned earlier, this was really fun and I'd love to know more about like how else could we work together? What else could we do together? And that's great, it's like bullseye, wonderful. And then you talk about it, For others, it's not as warm and you got to keep building that trust. And so there are other things you can do like introductions I mentioned, hopefully meeting up face to face. So like I have 2 dinners scheduled in the next month, one in San Francisco, one in Scottsdale, where I'm traveling to speak at an event. In conjunction with that, I'm doing a dinner. And so when I do something like that, I will bring people together, and I bring together people who I've interviewed over the podcast, but face to face, because there's no doubt that when you meet people face to face, it makes a much stronger relationship. Yeah. So those are the kind of the general routes I would recommend as far as before, during, and after the interview.
Now, your clients where you're doing this done for you podcast thing, I'm imagining people can get kind of leads crazy. They get a little bit like, oh my God, this is great. I just had John on the podcast and I'm going to immediately pitch him. I'm going to immediately send that email going, hey, John, we talked about problem X. We can help you with that.
Yeah.
How do you advise your clients to slow down and stop, thinking about this like a dog going after a piece of red meat?
I think the best thing to do is just explore whether they have a need for what you're doing. And you kind of leave breadcrumbs along the way. One is, the guest is probably going to learn about you. They're probably going to check out your website, your LinkedIn profile. So they're going to educate themselves a little bit. Then, as you did so well at the beginning of this interview, I'd like to point out, you read a sponsorship message, not pre-recorded that you add in post, but you read it at the beginning so that the person on the other end who doesn't always know everything that you do can hear what it is you do. So that will help shape and guide the conversation. And it also will lead to some guests who then after the episode will say, well, geez, David, I didn't know you did X, Y, and Z. Let's talk a little bit more about that. So that's really critically important. And then also afterwards, you might have some question that you ask them, which is around the topic of what you do, but not like immediately shoving it down their throat trying to sell. And again, this should come from a place of compassion. For example, it might be something like, so tell me, what are you excited about next year? Like we got the New Year's coming up soon. What are you excited about? Are you planning on doing more speaking gigs, or are you planning on what are you excited about? And they may say, well, actually, yeah, I am hoping to get on stage more often, but XYZ objection, whatever that challenge is, and then share some of your wisdom. It's not like you immediately start the clock and start charging them, but, then it gives you the opportunity to share some expertise. By the way, I started this process when I was a practicing lawyer. When I was a practicing lawyer, I'd interview people. It's not very often you get a free bit of advice from lawyers. So at the end of these interviews, almost every single time, people would be like, hey, by the way, I kind of got this legal question. And, and they would ask me some legal, and I'd be like, sure, I'd be happy to. And sometimes I would give them 10 minutes of free advice. Sometimes that would lead to then them becoming a client. Sometimes 2 months later, they would refer their brother-in-law who has a legal matter. But, whatever, it's you're never going to get 100%, but it does get you into communication with your ideal prospects and referral partners. And that often is the biggest challenge out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I know that sometimes people have a little bit of, let's say they want to start this, or they even engage you to help them start this. They go, well, John, I'm a nobody, or I'm a nobody firm. We're an accounting firm. We're an IT shop. We're a consulting company. Nobody knows us from Adam or Eve. How do I get my first handful of these connectors, referral partners, etc.? No track record, no iTunes top 50 marketing podcast, blah, blah, blah. No nothing, no guests, no past shows. It's like, we're starting from scratch. How do you get someone to say yes in those early days when you're at episode 0 or 5 or 10?
Wow, you really painted a vivid picture there. Whoever is listening to this, they're feeling pretty bad about themselves now. Just kidding. But no, I mean, like, the truth is, like, you don't need those things. Like, you'd be surprised how many people will say yes. I mean, I don't recommend you start with Richard Branson and Oprah Winfrey, reaching out to them. Start with the people who already know, like, and trust you. Start with friends, because plus you're going to feel more comfortable with that too. I mean, it takes a little while to get your legs underneath you. And so start with the people that you already know and trust. Plus, those are the people that are most likely to refer you, most likely to, recommend you to someone else. And what you'll find is when you bring people onto the podcast, you're elevating them. You're putting them on a pedestal. You're sharing their thought leadership with the world, even if you don't have a ton of downloads, and people become really appreciative of that. And then that will just naturally lead to referrals. And then you can work your way up. After you've gotten some more people, you work your way up to higher and higher people. Maybe you've got, a lot of people have like connections to someone in their industry who's of a higher level of prestige, a higher level of accomplishment in their career. So you kind of work your way up to that. The other thing I would say is use your own professional expertise as social proof. So rather than saying I've got an X number of downloads, you say, I've worked for, so-and-so and so-and-so. I've done this. You talk about your own professional accolades. And a lot of the times, the person on the other end is going to be just really interested in having conversation with you because you're interesting too. You have a certain level of achievement, even if it's outside of the podcast realm. Increasingly, we're seeing that to be the case where we have people who have, interesting professional level of accomplishment, obviously outside of podcasting. They come to podcasting much later and, it's totally fine. So they use that as kind of their social boost. That's what I would recommend.
What a great episode. Wowza. Tell you what, if you want to ramp up your revenue as an expert who speaks professionally, you should really check out our free online training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. Let me ask you a little bit of a kind of a behind the scenes question again. I've seen lots and lots of corporate logo collections. People say, our clients include blah, 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 blah. I'm a huge old school video game nut. I have never seen Atari. Never seen Atari on a logo lineup except at rise25.com. I'm just dying of curiosity. What's the Atari project?
Nolan Bushnell. Yeah.
How about that?
The founder of Atari. Actually, what's interesting is Nolan Bushnell is the founder of Atari and also Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that. Isn't that crazy? Like those are so very different, like Atari, the groundbreaking video game company, and also Chuck E. Cheese,
Totally fantastic.
Without a doubt, I have found that the podcasts have gotten me access to people that I had no business getting access to, like those types of people. And, a couple of months ago, I interviewed the co-founder of Activision Blizzard, which is the largest video game company today. At its peak, it was doing $52 billion a year in revenue. And the thing is, I can't email someone like that, of that caliber, and say, hey, you live in Los Angeles. I'm going to be visiting LA. I'm going to be in your neighborhood. You want to meet me at a Starbucks? I'd love to spend 45 minutes picking your brain and asking questions that are a benefit to me, frankly. That doesn't work, as we all know. But on the other hand, when you have a podcast, it's not that much different. For one, it's more convenient for them because they don't have to travel across town. They don't even need to put on pants, so it's just across the computer. And then you're recording something and it's going to be on the interwebs for eternity. And you're going to promote the crap out of it. And, you're going to elevate them. And people feel good when they're asked for their wisdom and they can share it with others in the world. So I've just found that, across the board, we've done different forms of collaborations or joint ventures, or we've served clients, everything from Tony Robbins' company to a division of Berkshire Hathaway to Salesforce to AWeber, you name it, and all kinds of different thought leaders and authors and speakers and things like that, yourself as well. But some of those, again, it goes back to some of those are great in terms of social proof. Others are clients. Not all are going to turn into clients. Some are going to be good sources, like good referral partners. Honestly, some of the best connections oftentimes are, ones that people haven't heard of. It really just depends on what your objectives are, what your goals are with the business. So, a lot of times people pursue the influencer strategy. They want to get famous people like a Gary Vaynerchuk of the world or Grant Cardone or something like that. And I'm often talking them out of it. What are you expecting to get out of that? It's not going to lead to all of a sudden Grant Cardone's going to be your next client in all likelihood, So anyways.
Right, exactly. I also want to talk a little bit about your testimonial strategy. And you've got 2 out of the 3 testimonials on your website. Now, I've never seen this, even though this is what I do. I think it's really, really smart. Not because I do it, but I think people want to know. These are not little 30-second clips. Oh, John and Jeremy, they're awesome. It was really valuable. You should hook up with them. We're talking 8, 10, 12, 14-minute deep dive. Where were you in your business? What wasn't working? What did these guys help you with? How was this different than other things that you've tried before? Where's your business today? What outcomes do you hope to achieve? We're talking about meaty, story-based client profiles or client success stories. This is what we do. I was so thrilled to see that you've got that going on also. Talk a little bit about that philosophy of testimonials and why that little 15, 20-second clip often isn't really enough to build credibility.
Sure. Yeah. So getting client testimonials is so hard for so many people. I mean, I can't tell you how many different people I've talked to where they have an amazing array of incredible clients. Literally, I was talking to a guy yesterday. He said, I've had his clients, all these different NBA teams, NFL teams, like these famous, like big companies like Disney, ABC, stuff like that. And I was like, I'm looking at your website. Where are the testimonials? Like, you would never know that those are your clients. And people really struggle with that. So what I encourage people to do is just make it into a conversation. And you have to really say to people that, look, we have others who are considering working with us to achieve, the result that you deliver. Like, for example, to get on stage and be able to speak powerfully and share your message with the world. We have others who are considering that, and they're trying to decide whether we can help them. I would love to share your story with them to help them to decide whether we're the right one for them. That's so much different from, can you give me a testimonial? Okay. And then I do it personally. So I get on the phone with someone over Zoom like this, and I say, we're just going to do a conversation. And then you're going to take me through where you were, where we took you, where you are now. And that's the basic structure. And then you just ask them about, okay, what were you thinking before you worked with us? And you specifically want to hear, what were their objections? What were they thinking? Like, what were they like? Oh, I'm not sure if I should work with David because I'm not sure if it'll work. It seems like I don't know if my industry is right, or, whatever the objections. You want to hear those because other people are thinking them. So you want them to articulate them. You get them out of them, and then you move on. Okay, you made the decision to work with us, and then what did we do? Give them kind of like a little bit of a behind the scenes so that people who are watching this in the future, who are considering working with you, get a glimpse of, okay, they can really start to picture what it's like, and then they get to see the end result as well, what that's going to look like at the end. And I was kind of chuckling when you were saying that, because part of it is a little bit laziness, I feel like we probably could edit those better rather than just having a long testimonial. On the other hand, I kind of like the transparency of it. And I did edit down those so that, take out some of the extraneous stuff. But, we've got a 10-minute video. It doesn't take that long. If you're considering spending a lot of money with someone, watching a 10-minute video is not that big a deal. And people are willing to invest that amount of time. So it's like, look, here's the whole story. Listen to this client. And so, I find that is a much easier way to get client testimonials. And so that's what I usually encourage people to do, is don't do it as a testimonial. Do it as, I'm going to interview you and I'm going to share your story. And oftentimes I'll say, I don't even know how I'm going to use it. So that takes a little pressure off of them. Because if they think like, oh, you're going to splash my video on your website, like that seems like too much pressure. I'm worried about it. But if you just say, I just like to capture your story. We're going to use it at some point in the future. Maybe not. But I just want to capture your story.
It's so funny that you say this, because I just recorded a batch of 4 brand new testimonials. I did not send it to my editor, and I'm busy, and all kinds of things are getting in the way. And I'm sitting on these 4 unedited videos. And so my client says, this is like weeks have gone by. My client says, did you post the video yet? Did you post the video yet? Is it ready? Can I see it? Can I share it with people? So some people really love the fact that they're in the spotlight. They're one of your success stories. They're one of your A players. And so it's like, okay. And then I sent these over to my editor just literally yesterday going, Phil, could you edit these videos? Because I'm kind of getting pressure from my client here. She'd like to see the finished product.
Yeah. Well, that's good. To have someone who has that kind of experience is great. If you have that, then you don't have as much of a worry with people who are feeling the pressure of, telling their story.
Right, exactly. Well, and also my audience is kind of skewed, right? Because they're folks like you and me. They're consultants, they're speakers, they're podcasters, they're on video all the time.
They want to be in the spotlight.
They're not a shy, retiring group, generally speaking.
Exactly.
That's funny. All right. Well, this has been such a fantastic interview. I've got 2 final questions here as we come to our wrap up. The final question is, how do people get connected and stay connected to more John Corcoran genius. And we're going to hook up all of those links and goodies in the show notes under this episode at thespeakingshow.com. Before that, though, John, if folks were to take one overall idea about the value of podcasting, the strategy of podcasting, take one central idea from our conversation today, what do you hope that would be?
I'm a big believer in keeping things as simple as possible, starting with the smallest micro steps. So 9 years ago, when I was full-time practicing law, I had a client who came to me and hired me for a tiny little matter. It was like $500 to write a lease for a spare bedroom. These days, you just hire Airbnb, but afterwards, I realized this guy's really an accomplished entrepreneur. He'd started multiple companies, some of which had gone public. I was like, how can I make this guy an ongoing client? So I reached out to him and I said, hey, can I just have 20 minutes of your time? I'm going to interview you. I'm going to record it. I used freeconferencecall.com to record it. I'm going to upload it to the web. I didn't even know how to do that. And I did that. And then afterwards, it was like, hey, this was fun. And he said, by the way, can you also help me with this and this other thing and this other thing? And he ended up becoming a great client. And so it was messy. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a podcast or anything like that. I just got started. So I would encourage you to do that. You've probably got good past clients who maybe you haven't talked to in a while. You probably got good people who've referred business to you multiple times, and maybe you haven't talked to them in a while. Maybe it's been a year or two have gone by. Reach out to them. Take the time to take interest in them. It's so much more appealing than sending an email to someone saying, hey, remember me? Want to refer any business my way? That doesn't work that well. But on the other hand, featuring them, even if you're not sure, exactly how you're going to use it, where you're going to publish it, how you're going to get it published. We can help you with that if you want. But, no matter what, just get started with that piece really is the most important piece. And then as far as, connecting with me, Smart Business Revolution is the name of the podcast. You can check it out on any of the different podcasting apps out there. And Rise 25 is the name of our business. You can go to rise25.com or connect with me on LinkedIn, send a message there. Be sure to say, hey, I heard you on David's podcast when you reach out.
Awesome. Thank you, John Corcoran. You're a rock star. I appreciate you. Great
Likewise.
to have you on. And thanks for being number 12 and then number whatever this will end up being.
That sounds great. Thanks, David.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.